This is Bruce Friedman of Adult Site Broker, and welcome to Adult Site Broker Talk, where every week we interview one of the movers and shakers of the adult industry, and we discuss what's going on in our business. Plus, we give you a tip on buying and selling websites. This week we'll be talking to adult industry veteran Dan Hogue. Adult Site Broker is proud to announce ASB Cash, the first affiliate program for an adult website brokerage. With ASB Cash, you'll have the chance to earn as much as 20% of our broker commission, referring sellers and buyers to us at Adult Site Broker. Check our website at asbcash.com for more details. First of all, today let's cover some of the news going on in our industry. A Texas Supreme Court justice questioned long-standing interpretations of Section 230 liability protections last week while hearing a case that deliberately tests the exception to the so-called First Amendment of the Internet that was carved out by FOSTA SESTA for alleged instances of human trafficking. The Texas Supreme Court is hearing the case after a Harris County District Judge and a Houston Appellate Court rejected Facebook's argument that Section 230 explicitly shields online platforms from liability for content posted by third-party uploaders. Lawyers for the three plaintiffs, three women, only identified as Jane Does who alleged they were victims of human trafficking as minors, claimed that Facebook would be liable under the exception to Section 230 immunity created in 2018 by FOSTA SESTA. The lawyers allege Facebook is liable because it provided the platform that resulted in their being trafficked, legal site Law 360 reported. They accuse Facebook of negligence, gross negligence, and violations of a Texas anti-trafficking law passed in 2009, Law 360 reported. According to the news site, the justices in the Texas Supreme Court questioned during oral arguments yesterday whether Section 230 is applicable if the allegation is that Facebook provided an unrestricted platform for predators to exploit, extort, and recruit children into the sex trade. Texas Supreme Court Justice Deborah Lerman, a Republican, took aim at Section 230 protections when questioning Facebook's immunity because it may have failed to warn users of the dangers of sex trafficking. One of the Jane Doe's allegations Lerman highlighted during her questioning of Facebook's attorney is not about the published statement, but about the failure of the company to warn that this could lead to violent sexual behavior. A lawyer for the Jane Does, Warren Harris, also cited an October 2020 dissent from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas in the Malwarebytes versus Enigma Software Group case. Thomas surprised legal observers by using that dissent to openly criticize Section 230 and advocate for his reform, a militant act of judicial advocacy from the highest bench that inserted the justice into an ongoing debate that is the constitutional prerogative of the legislative branch. Democratic U.S. Representative Ro Khanna of California has announced he is planning to reintroduce a bill to study the effects that FOSTA SESTA legislation has had on sex workers' safety, rights, and issues. Khanna told the Capitol Hill's news site The Roll Call that the bill, which he first introduced during the last Congress and was supported by Elizabeth Warren in the Senate, was inspired by what he saw as a lack of representation of sex worker voices in the legislative process. There's no politician who gains political currency for standing up for the voices of sex workers, Khanna said. They're not a voting bloc, they're not a donor bloc. Lobbyists don't represent them on Capitol Hill, and they were just totally shut out. They were simply invisible. Roll Call also interviewed sex workers advocate Kate Adamo, a partner with the organization Reframe Health and Justice, who explained that there are so many people advocating for the criminalization of the sex industry, whether it's law enforcement or religious movements, folks who think they can criminalize the sex industry out of existence. They have people on the Hill meeting with offices regularly, and sex workers don't, D'Adamo said. Sex worker advocates have pointed out that their voices and experiences are crucial to frame the current bipartisan debates on making further changes to Section 230 protections. FOSTA SESTA was conceived as a Section 230 exemption and drafted by religiously inspired Midwestern Republicans like Representative Ann Wagner of Missouri, who said it was the most effective way to ensure websites could no longer traffic children with impunity. Khanna's bill from last year was called the SESTA-FOSTA Examination of Secondary Effects for Sex Workers Study Act and would have required the Department of Health and Human Services to conduct a study on sex workers' health and safety, particularly how they've been affected by the 2018 passage of FOSTA SESTA. Last month, Roll Call reported sex worker groups signed a letter from more than 70 organizations to the Biden administration and Congress warning that further changes to Section 230 would do more to already at-risk communities than it would to embattled social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter. The organizations recommended passing Khanna's bill to study the effects of FOSTA SESTA before making any fundamental changes to Section 230 protections. Now let's feature our property of the week that's for sale at Adult Site Broker. Adult Site Broker is proud to list for sale a network of 2 mainstream dating sites. The websites are currently run on someone else's system. Unfortunately, that company will go out of business at the end of March. Because of this, the owner decided to sell the websites at a very reasonable price. If the company is not sold by the end of March, the sites will migrate to a new platform and the price will go up to a more reasonable valuation. The sites get their traffic from the UK, Australia, Belgium, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. Both are mainstream flirt chat websites with credit monetization on a pay-per-message basis. They have a loyal customer base of 27,000 plus real members, with many customers still active from 2017. Some have spent more than 10,000 euros. The average customer spends 450 euros. The sites have very steady recurring revenue. With very low overhead and a proven ROI of 900% on every euro spent on affiliate marketing, these sites have room to grow from where they are now. The weekly upkeep of the sites requires very little time, and most of the work consists of promoting the sites to bring in new customers and tease the existing 27,000 plus strong member database. Many great markets are yet untapped for these sites, but could easily be added, such as Germany, France, and the USA. Thanks to the non-adult nature, you can easily promote them via Google and email. You can buy these 2 great sites now for only 484,000 euros. The price is going to go up to 632,000 euros after March 31st. Now time for this week's interview. My guest today on Adult Site Broker Talk is Dan Hogue, Director of Operations at Pornstar Platinum and Transerotica. Hey Dan, thanks for being with us today on Adult Site Broker Talk.
Happy to be here, Bruce. Thanks.
And happy to have you. Now, Dan started in 1998 in the amateur market with his then wife and had the first swinging couple site on the internet. Dan morphed this into starting a cam network with other amateurs, and then he rolled that into one of the top cam companies, one of the early cam companies, Cam Z, which specialized in cam shows for amateurs and porn stars to broadcast shows on their members' areas. Dan spent 15 years in the cam business and won Best Live Cam Site from XBiz, as well as an Industry Pioneer Award for innovations in live cams. Now, Dan is now Director of Operations, as I said, at Pornstar Platinum and Transerotica. He's heavily involved in the channels management for porn stars. After 23 years in business, Dan is still actively involved in the industry, and he's loving every minute of it. Now, Dan, why don't you tell us how you got started in the industry and maybe a little bit more about your background in adult?
Love to. It's kind of a funny story, actually. We were, my then wife and I were in the lifestyle. We were swingers, and we were out on adult friend finder, trying to hook up with people, and we happened to meet this girl, Abby, and her husband, and they suggest we meet at a local swingers club in when we were then living in Kansas City at the time on the Kansas side.
Swingers in
And
Kansas City. God, that's a hard
it's
one. That's
huge.
a hard one to figure.
There, there are so many swingers and alternative lifestyle clubs out there. My son still lives out there. Actually,
Okay.
he uh, he is a security for a couple of fetish clubs out there, and
Oh,
he's
wow.
also a dom now. But he's like 39 now, so he's like,
Oh, geez. I remember him when he was a kid.
yeah, I know, right? Well, I had him when I was 16, so as a single parent at 18 years old,
Jeez.
custody, 100% custody. So
Wow.
I started young. But
So-
anyways, back then, we really we didn't know about swinger clubs. We knew of them, but we were kind of intimidated going, and they had that predisposition of, we don't want to mix with, those people, we didn't know anything about it. We just made assumptions that were totally without merit. Anyways, so this girl and her husband suggested we meet at one of the clubs, and so we said, okay, why not? And we went, and we ended up having a fucking great time. It was phenomenal, and we ended up back in their room, and she made the statement, "Would you like to shoot pictures for my website?" And I was like, "Sure," and looked at my wife, and she said, "Sure, why not? Be fun." And and a light bulb went off in my head that this was a great icebreaker. Like, when you first meet somebody, there's maybe some awkwardness at times, you're not sure and blah, 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 especially for us as, we weren't used to this type of meeting people in lifestyle. We were more like, I used to term it sociopathic swingers. We would hit on our friends who were not necessarily in the lifestyle and try to get them to party with us. But, in this situation, though, that light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? Afterwards, we had our fun, and we took some pictures, and and she showed us her website and stuff like this, and I'm like, you got to tell me more about this. I want to know more. And so she ended up introducing us to her webmaster, and I was immediately like, we're going to do this. My wife was like, yes, let's do it, and. So we immediately started talking to some of we started going to this club all the time. We ended up building up a great group of people. We had like 10 couples, 15 couples in Kansas City, including, I don't know if you remember Anna and Bruce from Four Real Swingers. And they and, a bunch of other couples, we would just end up hanging out all the time. And we started shooting pictures with our friends, and it was so much fun that we just ended up. Ann and Bruce, aka Butch and Karen, they actually wanted their face swirled out because they didn't want their face on the internet, and then they saw the first check of our website after the first week. We did like, I don't know, it was like $2,500 our first week we opened. And so I was like, they were like, wait, what is this? How are you doing this? And next thing you know, they're opening up their websites, and we teamed up for a little while, and we started building websites for all these couples on the that we hung out with. And we had trips, and we would take over a hotel down in Bennett Springs, and we would go on float trips. It was just a blast. And we had so much fun, and we kind of started reaching out to other amateurs, and I bought a domain called barmeet.com, and we started having bar meets across the country. Started meeting people like Oasis and Jen and Dave and other people in different parts of the country. We'd set up little get-togethers and stuff like that, and we had them in Kansas City with Carol Cox coming into town. We ended up having an orgy on the radio station, and it was a lot of fun back in those days.
Sure.
But that's pretty much how we got started. And then it was the beginning of the end, so to speak, was when, because we were in a very conservative area, right? Kansas is not necessarily known for, even though there's a huge LGBT community and swinger community, it's very conservative.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, especially back in the 2000, turn of the century.
Yeah.
We ended up going on the radio station with Carol Cox and two other couples, and we ended up having an orgy and went out, and parts of it went out live over the air.
Jeez.
So we ended up getting outed. Our,
I'm surprised it didn't end up getting busted.
right? And we ended up, some of our pictures were like forced. They told us, hey, look, you got to blur out the radio station name and all that stuff. But anyways, we ended up getting outed. And you got to remember, my wife was like, we had children, and
Sure.
my son, he might have been a little older. He was in high school at the time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But my two daughters were not. They were,
Mm-hmm.
9 and 6.
Jeez.
So they were, my wife was very active, in brownies and Girl Scouts, dance mom. She was the vice president of the PTO the Catholic school where my kids went to school.
I'm sure that didn't go over very good there.
Yeah, so we got a call from Monsignor. He booted her off the PTO.
Oh, sure.
And basically, half the parents that were like not telling their kids why they could not hang around with our kids anymore, but they couldn't come over anymore. And we would literally, we did a very good job of separating our lifestyle and our business from the family. Obviously, we're parents. We're diligent in not exposing them to things that they shouldn't be exposed to at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
But we were faced then with the dilemma of having to deal with that. And so that's when we decided to move to Florida, because the kids were at an age where they could tell them that, oh, you can't hang around with those kids, but they wouldn't say why. Right. In a couple of years, they're going to be able to say why they can't hang around with them. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny because half the people that we knew were either like shunning us, and the other half were like waving enthusiastically. Hey, how you doing? I want to hang out with you guys.
That's funny.
But so that's pretty much how I got started in adult, and really what turned it around into more of a service. Going into the service side because of how it affected my family. I knew that we could not keep bethandaaron.com or netcouples.com going. And I don't know if there was any thought at the time. I don't really remember if there was a thought at the time of longevity of it. We were older than most of the counterparts. We were already in our 30s.
God forbid.
Yeah. So we decided to start hosting amateur sites, building, and just kind of consulting with them and helping them grow their businesses. So we started amateur hosting to host their sites for free. We started a cam show that would compete with, Danny's Hard Drive, Danny's Hard Drive, and Carol Cox. At the same time, we kind of split our ways with Ann and Bruce, and they started a network. So we started a cam network for amateurs, but we took a little bit of a different approach to it, where they were working. Basically, the problem that we had with the amateur cam networks back then was that the people who ran it were really out for themselves, and they were looking to siphon as much traffic as they could to their own stuff.
Of course.
And we always kind of resented that because we're supplying them the content. We should all share in the fruits of it equally. Mm-hmm. And so the theory behind amateur cams at the time, it was just Amateur Cam Z, was that we were going to build a network of shows that we all share each other's 1-hour shows, and we're equal, all of it. All of it's equal in that, and we're going to have a rev share with the people for the money that it does make. And we were going to box it and give it to places like Max Cash, Silver Cash, all those old school programs that would buy content for their members area.
Right.
And we even did with Leo from now My Free Cams, but back then he was My Free Pay Site.
Right.
And, he would put it in his members area as well. And we would share links, and we had free versions, we had paid versions. but we paid the girls $50, at least $50. Back then, that was pretty substantial. It was something other than nothing. Plus, we hosted their sites for free on their websites. And then we paid them per show. And then we would make sure that they would get traffic for their websites as well.
Nice.
So it was kind of a unique approach that really kind of took off. And we ended up having 20 to 24 hours a day of live shows, sometimes 2 an hour.
Yep.
And it really was, it owned the amateur market, and it was kind of fun back then.
I remember.
And then when we got lucky with a little program called Flash, prior to it coming out, we were out courting the developers at Adobe and at the mainstream shows and everything, and we got an early copy of it so we could dev it out, and we were sending them some amateurs who were horny just to get on these guys' good side. We party with them, and
funny.
And they took really good care of us.
Oh, I bet they did.
Yeah, so right when it came out, we were already ready. So we were the first cam site when we switched over to private cams, and we started offering the first version of CamZ was called Private CamZ. When we first hit the switch, we already had the traffic from our plugins and our free version with all the shows. It was instant money for the girls on the network. So they started doing private shows using Flash. No more Windows Media encoder. Back then, it was so cumbersome and big, and it was really hard to, hard for them to grasp. Where Flash was so easy back then.
Sure.
It was like night and day to be able to use. We could save the archives really easy, and we could service a lot more people with a lot less servers, and it was just a breath of fresh air, and it was so nice to code and friendly to use on the websites. So we kind of blew up with that. We had 100%, 200% growth every year for I don't know, 5-6 years in a row, probably. It was a lot of fun. And then especially when we hit CamZ, it was right after 2000. We launched in 2000, so it was like 2002, I think. 2003 we launched private cams, and then I think 2004, 2004 I think we went right into CamZ, and that was the nice run.
That was big. That was big. You must have shed a tear or two recently when Flash was killed.
It was funny because we were the first one to get it and the last one to leave it.
Funny.
Which was probably my downfall when it comes to cams.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
technology changes.
Oh, I'm telling you. Now, what do you feel is the greatest opportunity now for new people coming into the adult industry?
Certainly has to be the fan platforms. Models today have a wonderful opportunity. They have so much power now, more power than even back in the amateur days.
Sure.
Amateurs made a lot of money back in the day. It was like they didn't rely on companies; they relied on other friends. We had friends exchanges and stuff like that. We relied on each other, and it's very similar to today's market, where anybody who has the ability to gain a following in social media can make money on the fan platforms.
Yep.
And so I think that for new people is do whatever it takes to be consistent on those platforms. Like that opportunity, it doesn't come along very often. And to see what's going on with fan platforms is a phenomenal thing. And I see it every day and work with it every day, and the amount of money and the amount of opportunity for fans to really get to know and get inside the heads of the performers that they follow, and the amount of interactions that are available to fans and models is unlike anything outside of having that 24/7 voyeur cams that we used to have.
Yeah.
And them actually being able to communicate is a wonderful thing and a great opportunity for models these days
Yeah.
to monetize their content.
Sure. Sure. Now, what's your passion when it comes to our industry?
Right now, I'm actually getting back into shooting, which is very passionate for me right now. But
Cool.
it's just now, just thinking about it and getting back in. I'm going to be doing some POV stuff for myself. But my passion has always been cam, and it will always be. It's been really hard the last 7 years being outside of the cam game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's been a couple companies that have contracted for some, they brought me in for some consulting gigs on things, and I've been blessed to be able to do that, and I've
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it. But it is still my passion. I still try to keep up with what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, right now we're working on a project in house that does involve a lot of white label stuff, which is for me, the stepping stone is always, a lot of affiliates told me, like, how do I get into the cam business? That everybody wants to be own a cam company, right?
Sure.
And I always, my first response was always try being an affiliate first. If you can do a white label and you can get enough traffic and enough infrastructure to funnel traffic to your white label to make money on that white label, well, then you start building your traffic network.
That's a great
first.
idea. Yeah.
And so my passion right now is we are doing that now with not only Pornstar Platinum and Transerotica. Pornstar Platinum has always had a white label and it's done fairly well, especially since I got on board with them. It was one of the first things I did was examine what they were doing with live cam. And we 10x their revenue from it. And but we are now building white labels for 3 of the companies that I run with them. And so I'm excited to build the infrastructure around the funnels, taking a look at what Jerkmate's doing, the phenomenal job that they have done, not only on their front end, but their back end infrastructure, stuff like that is really something that has my blood flow going because they've done a tremendous thing. The amount of backlinks and blogs and things like that they have that have built an infrastructure that is so solid. That kind of stuff really gets me going. And so to be able to take a look at it, take a look at different models out there for developing traffic to white labels, developing a white label that makes sense with the right partner that we have. And that right now is something that I really enjoy working on, along with the 7 or 8 other projects that we have going on. But that one stands out to me as the one I'm probably the most passionate about.
Yeah, I probably get more requests from people to buy campsites than just about anything else, and they're just not out there. It's amazing. Now, what is it that you're working on right now?
Well, outside of what I just mentioned, we're working on upgrading the tech for the membership sites themselves. Pornstar Platinum and Transerotica, for those who don't know, is it's a membership site for official websites for stars. Say on the Pornstar Platinum side, you're talking about like a Laura Jensen, a Dee Williams, and a bunch of others. And so we do not only their official websites, but we also have a network site for Pornstar Platinum. And so everything is done on trade. So the girls are getting content that they can feed to their channels, to their fan platforms, use it in various ways that they need to monetize that content. They get professionally shot content for free. And they also get another demographic in the sense that they get a website of their own, their official website, to display that, to make additional revenue from, albeit a lot less than what they're making on those some of those other platforms, but it's still another source of income.
Sure.
But the key component to that would be they get content. They get a steady flow of content that doesn't professionally shot, professionally edited, that doesn't cost them anything. And that's probably the biggest benefit. to them. So one of the things that we have done, to get back to your original question, was we're trying to upgrade the model of the membership site. We need to integrate more technology and more updated forms of making it relevant to the fans, bringing that fan component to it, the integration and hybrid, so to speak, of a fan platform within the membership sites. So we're working on technology right now to incorporate that into the websites so that the girls make more money. They have a little bit more control. They can update their wall themselves. They can answer questions and DMs, and they can send out special customs. They can do whatever the things that they would normally do on their fan stuff. They can do that.
Nice.
We are going to be doing that, especially with Transerotica and Pornstar Platinum. We're developing. It's called Trans Fans with an S. I'm getting away. No more Z's for me. And then, but that's basically what it's going to be. It's basically a hybrid that we're going to integrate into the websites themselves. So it's good. It's gonna help the model be a little bit more substantial as far as revenue possibilities, as well as make it more relevant to today's market, and keep up with the times, so to speak.
What kind of?
That's one of.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's just one of the things that we're working on. Obviously, we try to stay ahead of the curve, and even though we're in such a dinosauric market, we still make money, right? Membership sites, they don't make the money that they used to, and they may never make the money that they once did, but they still do make money. We still grow year after year, and so updating those is still profitable for us.
Well, speaking of money, what kind of money can the stars make on membership sites like Transerotica and Pornstar Platinum?
Well, obviously, it varies from star to star. Some have the following, some have the stardom and recognition. Just like fan bases are fan bases, and it also depends on, you get what you put into it as well. As a porn star who wants to help with the marketing and help with being a part of it, whether it's through live shows for those members, or even helping us promote it, or linking to it, shooting consistently. I think the biggest hurdle for us as a company is getting the models to be consistent in updates. And because affiliates are very fickle, they don't necessarily trust the individual personality-based websites, right? Because so many times they get abandoned. Yeah. Whereas companies like Pornstar Platinum will always have updates, but individual stars within Pornstar Platinums may not be. So it's very difficult, and it takes some reaching out and showing that, hey, I am involved with this. I am involved with my membership site. For instance, it's been a breath of fresh air. We signed a girl by the name of Anna Claire Cloud. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's an OC modeling girl. She's super phenomenal. She's fucking phenomenal chick. I really like her. She's a go-getter. She's very motivated, very together, very business savvy, and just wants to be a part of it. Is helping us help her, and that's where they can make a substantial income. Oh yeah, when they're helping us help them, and it really makes all the difference. For us, it's very difficult when we have to reach out and always have to try to pull teeth just to get an update. It's very difficult for us to be motivated to help them, and it's also something that affiliates notice, because we give them usernames and passwords to get in there sometimes and pull some promo that they need for their websites and how they link to it, to their blogs or whatever, however they're doing it. Review sites are notorious for that, right? They want to get in there and see it. If they see that they're not updating, well, guess what they're going to put out there? They're going to ping them because they're not putting out regular updates.
Of course.
Or they're not doing live 1-hour shows for their members. that's probably the biggest hurdle we have with that.
Okay.
But those who do can still make, anywhere from 2 to 6,000 a month down to a couple hundred a month. It really, like those who hustle can do fairly well with them, as a secondary source of revenue for them. Their primary source of revenue, let's face it, is going to be their fan platforms, right?
Sure. Sure.
Most models, that's their primary source of revenue. But it's always good to have some other revenue coming in. You never know when you're going to get kicked off or, slow paid, or, some of them get kind of temperamental. You never know if they're going to lose their merchant account.
Imagine that. Performers temperamental.
We all are at some point. But,
indeed.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that I've worked with some really good people, and I've been blessed. I really have.
Absolutely. Now tell me about trade content. Why is it so important to your platforms as well as to performers in general?
Huge now. Back when we started this, it was kind of shunned upon. Like, why would you want to do that? Everybody was like, why would I want to give up? Like, I'm not getting paid for this shoots. Why do I want to do trade content and build a website? And now it's like they wish they'd had done it 10 years ago, right? We started this 8 years ago, 9 years ago now. I think Pornstar Platinum was 9, 10 years ago. And, it was built on the premise of doing trade, for the most part. I mean, we did buy some scenes and we still do, but for the most part, all of our content is trade. And it's even more so relevant now with the fan platforms, because the girls need, between their ManyVids and OnlyFans, Clips for Sale, all of the different, loyal fans to all of the different platforms that they have. I Want Clips and Just for Fans and everybody, AVN Stars, you name it. There are so many options for performers to monetize that it almost becomes overwhelming for them.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into later when we start talking about NBC and stuff. But if we end up going there, but for trade content, we were so far ahead of the game because we started this so long ago when it was really shunned upon. Now it's a necessity. Girls have to do some trade content. They don't necessarily have to do it with Pornstar Platinum or Trans Erotica, because it ends up, they look at, it's a third person. But realistically, the only place that we're monetizing that content is within our websites, possibly a Pornhub, if it makes a Pornhub. With the girls on the network, we're also putting it out on DVDs, and we have an NMG. We work with NMG and those guys to do our distribution.
Sure.
And so, but we share our revenue with the girls on the network for that DVD and distribution revenue.
Right.
So everything that we do, we share with them. They get 70% of what their site makes, and they get their content for free, professionally shot.
Very nice.
Yeah. And so for it's a win-win, and let's face it, the girls are going to make much more money off that content than we ever will. Yeah. But it works for us and it works for them. They get what they need. We get a update for their website and for Pornstar Platinum and or Trans Erotica. And it helps them feed the many channels and ancillary revenues that they have, revenue streams that they have. So that's why it's very, very important today. And I would say that trade has almost become the norm, as opposed to, like, there's so many big stars that are saying, okay, I'm going to price myself out of so many scenes that, they're not begging companies now for shoots because they don't have to. Yeah. Like some of the big stars are saying, I'm just going to I'm going to put my rate at $3,500 a scene. And there's only so many companies that can afford that. And they do that basically just enough, do one or two a month or whatever it is, just to keep themselves relevant and out there from those companies. and they basically they're shooting 6 days a week trade content with their friends, and hiring photographers and or significant others doing the shooting, um, investing in equipment that where they can shoot quality content themselves, or trading with companies like ours and other trade companies, to where they can get professionally shot content for their other platforms, and because that's where their money's at.
Nice.
It's no longer waiting for that next paycheck from some company who hires them to, get a one-time pop on a scene.
Yeah.
Why get $1,000 or $1,200 for a scene when you could literally make $4,000 from that scene on your own?
Sounds good to me. Now, I think you just kind of referred to it, but you've got a new company called New Verticals. Tell me about it. Tell me what it does.
Well, we started that with my wife, my then wife, Alex Lavelle. She was our social media person for Transrodica at first, and she came up with a very unique way of doing our Snapchats. We wanted to do a Snapchat takeover. She came up with this great idea to do takeovers, and we do invite stars to come over and do one day of our public Snapchat and then one day of our private Snapchat, and they get every penny that it made during those 5 days of promo. We would do 3 days prior to that promos. They would do promos that they're going to be on here, and anything it made in those 5 days they got to keep. And they were guaranteed a minimum as well.
Nice.
And then she came up with this great idea of taking scenes every day and cutting them up and putting them on when there was no live person that we could have as a takeover. And so we were doing a couple, 2 or 3 takeovers a month, and then augmenting the days in between with putting up a scene cut up in 10-second clips every day. And we would update that. She would update the Snapchat, and it did very well for us. And then she just started doing our social media, and ended up expanding it into Pornstar Platinum for a while as well. And from there, she started looking at channels management and helping stars. Because if you think about it, if we got into this and I could sit here and name 15 different places for porn stars to go, or content creators to go and monetize their content.
Yeah.
But to be consistent on all of them is literally impossible for one person to do.
Sure.
If that person had a husband or wife or a significant other that worked with them, they may be able to do it consistently, but they wouldn't have a life. So what she did was we kind of put together a team that and develop techniques and things like that to assist them in being consistent, whether it's taking over posting, titles and description, organizing their content as it comes in, putting them out on the channels for them, making sure that their wall posts were what they wanted, helping them with their social media strategies, things like that. So she has an we put together an all-encompassing team that pretty much can do whatever the models need to maximize their channel's revenue and be consistent even when they are too busy to be consistent.
Sure. That's awesome.
So it kind of helps them. And obviously there's a percentage and or fees for certain things, and we don't do personal stuff for them. We just do their promo tweets and maybe some Instagram. We'll take care of their Instagram posts and things like that. Maybe some different things just to be consistent and give them a strategy. We have an SEO department that also will help with developing an SEO strategy if they do have a personal website or different things that we have learned that are successful within platforms on techniques to maximize the revenue for each platform, because each platform is not only individually challenging and has its own set of rules, but they're changing all the time too. You look at, let's just take ManyVids, for instance. ManyVids before, your ranking was basically on sales, right? It was all based around sales. Where now it's very much not. It's very much around the algorithm that they have for their social part of it. MB social is very, very important to your ranking, and it goes like on a 45-day cycle, and you need to be on top of it every day, and do things every day within your profile, whether it's making a post, retweeting your friend's post, or because basically it's like a Twitter board, right? And so you have to get little hearts. You have to do those things, and including uploading videos and or MV Crush, or doing those little things every day that earn you additional points towards your rankings to get your store more exposure. If you don't do those things, your store is getting very little exposure.
Yeah.
So like every platform changes their algorithms, including Instagrams and Twitters and everything else. So New Verticals was basically to assist those performers in helping them, get the consistency and maximizing their revenue.
Okay. Now you've obviously had quite a background. You've had a lot of notoriety and awards in the past for your innovations in live cams. Where do you see that segment of the adult world going in the next several years?
Growing leaps and bounds. I think that's one consistent. If you look back over the last 20 years, that is the one consistent growth industry that we have had within the adult community.
It's true.
Live cam is always going to be there because people, especially in this day and age, right now with COVID and being stuck at home, that having that interaction and that personal one-on-one interaction is very important. And it will always be there, in my opinion. I think that's where the money is. I think it's certainly where the growth is. It's very, very difficult to be a newcomer in that arena without really deep pockets.
Yeah, that's what I tell people when they ask me.
Yeah. Somebody said, somebody asked me, he says, Dan, I got this guy, he's filthy rich, and he wants to do he wants to get involved in porn, and he wants to do a live campsite. I'm like, how rich is he, and how much is he willing to lose? Because even back in my day, I lost $15,000 a month for 3 years straight.
Yep.
So.
And that's nothing. And that's nothing now.
That's nothing. Yeah. And we were. Yeah, but you remember we were the
You'd be lucky. You'd be lucky to do that. You'd be lucky to. You'd be lucky to lose that in a week now.
Yeah. No, you need $10 to $20 million to start a campsite, even realistically. I mean, Chatterbait, from what I understand, Chatterbait was started with like 9. So it can be done. But yeah, you need a solid plan and a lot of money to break through. There are some people who are growing organically. Like we were a shoestring operation. We were the smallest cam company, the smallest revenue cam company to ever win Best in Live Cam. Our annual revenue at CamZ was $5 to $6 million. Okay. That's like a day revenue of a StreamMate or I'm Live or Jasmine and those guys.
Yeah, my free cams. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's ridiculous. But we had a lot of fun, and and we did not buy traffic, and you need to be able to buy traffic
a lot.
Yeah. So what we had to do was innovate. We integrated with other cam sites. We actually integrated their performers into our site to make it look bigger than it was, and we didn't have to necessarily keep those performers happy. And then we would add $1.20 per minute, so we would lower our cost of goods to like 25%. So increased our profit margin too by doing that. So we had to innovate to stay on top of it to really stay competitive. But it was, They definitely not the revenue beasts that we have today.
No.
I think the battle is between free cams versus premium cams. And you can probably guess my preference is always going to be on the premium cams over the free cam. I think it's just I know that like in the free cam market, the top 80% of the revenue goes to the top 10% of the girls. And then in the premium side, you have at least a chance to build a following that you pop in, and when you have that following finally built up and you put the time into it, you can make your money and go on privates. You're not sitting there begging. Stripper mentality kind of approach to.
But Dan, that's for the models. What about for a company? What would the better model be for? Would be free or premium?
Starting out,
yeah. Let's
premium,
say
because traffic that you need, the amount of numbers that you need in traffic to create a free, like Chatterbait, MyFreeCams type model,
it's massive.
Is tremendous,
and it's expensive.
And traffic is very expensive.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
If you think back and you look back at the two people who were very successful, and you take MyFreeCams, for example, Leo was always a traffic guy. He always had that MyFreeCams. He had the XXX passwords. He always had traffic. The guy was a phenomenal traffic guy.
Oh, yeah.
And so for him, it was just flipping a switch.
Right.
And so,
he had My Free Pay site, so he funneled a lot of the traffic in there.
Yeah, and he was building and working on MyFreeCams during that time. So I remember those days very well. Ironically, I laughed and I'm like, this site it sucks.
Yeah,
but it sucked in such a great.
It still sucks, and he makes a fortune.
It's such a brilliant idea.
Yep.
He was so far ahead of his time. He always was. He's a brilliant guy. I love him.
He really is, and I agree with you. Since I've gotten to know him the last, 3-4 years, you can really see the guy's genius. He's also bought things from me, so I'm a little prejudiced. But anyway, so if you can offer any advice to models and performers out there, what would it be?
Don't become prima donnas. No.
No, I didn't say personal advice. No, I didn't say personal advice. I said performers overall.
Yeah. Stay true to yourself and be consistent. If think of everything. Think of a pot of gold in the middle of a table, and you want to surround it with as much ability to get as much of that gold as possible. And to do that, you need different demographics. You need to appeal to different demographics. Don't shut out and put all of your eggs in one basket, because you're only getting a certain segment of that table, that gold that's on that table. That you need to broaden your thinking into expanding to meet the different demographics that are out there that do pay you. Like, they're not always going to be huge. They're not always going to be huge moves, but in the end, you're never going to be relying on one thing, because one thing, as I know more than anyone, if you rely on one thing for all of your income sources, that one thing can go away.
Yeah.
And so to be diverse and look at all the different ways that you can monetize your content, expand your brand while you can, is very important. I mean, we look at the volatility of our net and the attacks on our industry.
Oh, yeah.
That continues even today. We wonder if we're going to wake up tomorrow and be shut out of Twitter. And if that happens, you think about the platforms that are out there that are left for non-safe for work content. There's only going to be one. If Twitter goes away, all we have is Reddit. Okay? That would be the last bastion for us as adult stars and adult performers to get out there our non-safe for work content to market. Now, granted, it's a good market in Reddit, but it takes a long time to build up. You thought Twitter was hard to build up. Try doing a Reddit.
Yeah.
But it is very successful once you do. But yeah, I mean, don't don't put all those eggs in one basket. Be consistent with all of the different platforms if you can. If you can't, look for teams that can help you, because they, although there's a percentage cost that comes with that, they can make you more consistent and more diverse.
Sure.
And help you, as opposed to looking at it as a zero-sum game kind of thing.
Absolutely.
That would be my advice, would be diverse.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Dan, I'd like to thank you for being our guest today on Adult Site Broker Talk. Hope we'll get a chance to do this again really soon.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
My broker tip today is part 4 of how to buy a website. Last week, we discussed making an offer and deciding the best price for the site you're buying. Once you've made your offer, the work begins. If you're working with a broker, like say, I don't know, maybe Adult Site Broker, we handle the negotiation for you. Let's say the seller doesn't accept your offer. They may make a counteroffer. If you decide that you're willing to pay more, you can either accept their counteroffer or counter back to them. A good rule of thumb is to always leave room to negotiate. So don't make an offer that's the absolute most you're willing to pay. If you do that, then you have nowhere to go if the owner counters your offer. Once the owner and you have come to a deal, then it's time to do some due diligence beyond what it is you've already done. During the initial process of looking at the site, you should have asked some basic questions, like in the case of a pay site, how many joins and rebills there are per day, and any other pertinent questions. During due diligence, you need to make sure everything is where you need it to be technically to integrate it with what you're already doing. You may even decide to get your developer involved if you're not tech savvy. You and or your developer should ask those pertinent questions. Once those are answered to your satisfaction, you should either have the seller or yourself draw up a sales agreement. I always tell my clients to do the agreement themselves. Why? Because that way you can dictate the terms. So whether you're the buyer or the seller, you can make the rules. However, just be ready to have the seller's attorney change some of those rules. Nothing is final until everything is signed off on. Another thing we do for our clients is to do a letter of intent prior to the sales agreement being done. This gives your attorney a roadmap for the agreement. The letter of intent, and more so the agreement, will have all of the terms involved, including who pays for everything. Who pays for escrow, for instance? This can be paid by the buyer, the seller, or split between both parties. We'll talk about this subject more next week. And next week, we'll be talking to another veteran of our industry, Robert Warren. And that's it for this week's Adult Site Broker Talk. I'd once again like to thank my guest, Dan Hogue. Talk to you again next week on Adult Site Broker Talk. I'm Bruce Friedman.